call this meeting to order and welcome to the POA Board semi-monthly meeting. We continue to operate under our COVID-19 protocols to protect our meeting participants. Today, 2 of our members are attending remotely. To assure transparency and allow community participation, this meeting is being live streamed. It's also being recorded and will be available on the POA website. Before we get started, I want to share some information relative to COVID vaccinations with you. Most of the village will fall into Phase 1B, which is people at a higher risk for contracting COVID because of 2 or more other conditions. Or Phase 2, which is people that are age 65 or older. Earlier groups include healthcare workers, first responders, and residents and staff of long-term care facilities. Anyone not in any of those groups is likely to fall into Phase 4, which is the general public, and that will be at a later time. We've been talking to the health department and have volunteered to let them use a village facility as a vaccination site due to the preponderance of at-risk individuals in the village. They have seemed receptive, but we do not have an answer yet. Winston will actually talk a little bit more about this when he gives his COVID update. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I need a motion to approve the December 2nd, 2020 TVPOA board minutes as presented.
Motion approved.
Sue? Bruce? I have a motion and a second. Any changes or comments? Okay, with that, all in favor? The vote is 7-0. The next item on the agenda is one that I look forward to every year, at least my 3 years on the board, is when the continuous improvement people come and tell us what a great job they've done. So I will turn it over to Mitzi.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I like to say to our staff, it's the most wonderful time of the year. What we've done is actually this year, because of COVID, for those of you that know, we are separated in the room. So I will present this to Rick in just a moment, but I'll just give my presentation sitting here at the table. But the CFO and myself have met in the past couple of weeks, and we've gone through each project that was turned in for the year of 2020 by both the management team and the staff, and determined the real dollar savings. Of course, in the beginning of every year, we set forth a goal, and we challenge the managers and staff throughout the entire year. Hey, let's see if we can meet that goal. And back in March, when we reevaluated what we had in place due to COVID, you know, there were times where we even went to the management and said, okay, hey, if we think we can't meet these goals, let's talk about it, let's look at them. And everybody said, no, we're kind of right on track, and we think that we'll be fine. So fortunately and excitingly, we were able to meet that goal this year. So without further ado, Rick, we will present this, but from on behalf of the POA staff and management team, we would like to present the POA board with a check to put in the reserve fund in the amount of $170,000. Woohoo!
Is that an official signature? I can go capture that. Thanks, Mitzi. Like I said, I look forward to that every year. It's a testament to our employees because they come up with these cost savings, you know, on their own, and I think they do a great job. So with that, we're going to move on to Winston Blazer's update on COVID operations.
Thank you, Mr. President. December 16th, the COVID report operationally, there's not much change to the POA operations from the prior couple of months that I've given a report. But with that said, I would like to add that the rec department has added a mask-only workout class. This was due to the request and in response to many property owners that requested that. So once again, rec is adapting to the times and is trying to accommodate the property owners. Also, I'd like to expound upon what Rick mentioned earlier. As most of you are aware, the vaccines are now being disseminated. The CDC and the governments have a criteria for their dissemination because obviously they cannot give everybody a shot on the same day. But in light of that fact, Dr. Clyde Martin, a property owner, a retired doctor, reached out to the POA, and he has credentials and experience in public health, safety, CDC. He has experience with CDC, mass vaccinations, and been on numerous governmental health agencies and committees in his career. He reached out to Rick and the POA to express a concern and to help and assist with the coming days that will obviously happen in the future for vaccinations. Mitzi and I met with Dr. Martin. We toured some facilities. We showed him that are around, gave him ideas, and we kind of all talked over possible ways that could be done. He has experience with mass immunization, so this is something that's right down his alley. He has also been in contact with the Loudoun County and Monroe County Health Department and their director, and has expressed our concern, due to our demographics, to be very quickly attended to, if at all possible, because we do have many people that the COVID-19 has a definite negative impact on their lives if it enters into their lives. So on the 24th, we toured the rec center. On the 25th, we followed that up with the phone call. Dr. Martin advised that he had talked to the county health director, and they prefer doing a drive-by immunization program. And so we followed up again. The three of us talked at length about what we could do. And we don't have a firm plan, but we are putting plans together, and we are waiting on the notification from the county that we have vaccinations and we are due. So when that time comes, we'll be ready for a drive-by or whatever the county health departments decide that we are going to end up doing a program. There's much need and planning that goes into this, and the POA is going to respond accordingly, but we need to have communications. We need to discuss possible traffic controls and the sequencing of property owners and who will get, vaccinations at what time, on what day, and so forth and so on. There is many thousands of us out here, and so, that will not be an easy task. But just want everyone to know that Dr. Martin, the staff, Rick and I have all been in consultation on this and working on the project and getting ready for the day that vaccines are ready for us. So I guess it's stay tuned, and all the facts will come together once we're notified by the county. And that's the end of my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Winston. Any questions for Winston? Anything from outside? Okay.
It is about a 7-second delay, so if there's something, not late.
Okay. The next agenda item is some revisions to the Blue Book, which is the construction handbook for residential construction. And with that, I'm going to ask Kevin Stevens to address the changes that are being proposed.
Good afternoon. As you may know, the ACC typically undertakes a periodic review of the Blue Book to determine if any revisions are appropriate. There are two particular Blue Book revisions that the board will be addressing today that the ACC has been working on. Both of these revisions are more technical in nature and don't substantively alter the aesthetic requirements for residential construction. The first revision is related to putting in writing the technical requirements for the installation of water and sewer equipment and connections to new houses. Previously, the Blue Book did not include any details setting forth the process for water and sewer connection. This revision itself was initially initiated by the PSAC committee. The committee felt very strongly that the Blue Book needed to include technical requirements for water and sewer installation. And in particular, wanted to adjust the process an installation protocol to address many of the previous problems related to water runoff and water infiltration in sewer tanks. So the PSAC committee has worked diligently with Public Works as well as the ACC to develop detailed technical specifications for installation of water and sewer in conjunction with new homes. This new revision is clearly sets forth the obligations of the various parties. As you may know, the TVPOA has some part in this process as they retain the independent contractor to install the tanks. And the home builder also has a role in this process as they install some of the other necessary equipment and connections. So the purpose of this revision is to really clearly set forth the process and the obligations of the respective parties for installation. And it also clarifies this process for property owners so that they can have a better understanding of what's required in conjunction with this component of construction. Again, it doesn't significantly alter the installation process, but is primarily to memorialize it, to put it in detail so that everyone has a clearer understanding of the process. I will note that there is one substantive procedural change in the process, is shifting the obligation of actually installing the water line connecting to the home itself from the POA contractor to the home builder. That's something that we believe protects the POA from liability, and think that that connection itself is better done by the home builder as opposed to the POA contractor. This language, again, has been thoroughly vetted by PSAC, Public Works, as well as the ACC. The ACC voted to formally approve this particular provision on December 3rd. So I certainly think it's appropriate, and we'll let the board address any questions or entertain approval of this. We're going to have two separate votes relative to these provisions.
So to start with, I'll need a motion to approve replacement of sections K, utilities, 2, water, and 3, sewer, of the Residential Construction Handbook with the new language proposed by the Architectural Control Committee and PSAC.
Thank you.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion. Bruce, you might want to address the PSAC piece of this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am liaison to the PSAC, and I've watched this process and watched it develop, and I would like to comment that the work between the PSAC and the Public Works Department has been extraordinary. It wasn't, it was a touch and go. It was back and forth, and they did come together and agree. It's a perfect example of people in the neighborhood looking out for the village. This was brought about and recommended by the PSAC. As you all know, those are volunteers, and they're members of our community looking out for the community. So on the other hand, the Public Works Department, working with this stuff every day, had to make sure that it wouldn't hamper them in their process, and it was for the benefit of the village. So my hat's off to both of those groups for making this come about. I think it will be good for us in the village, and I think we'll see more of this in the future, working together.
Other comments or questions? I'll emphasize something that Kevin said. This really does not represent a whole lot of change. What it does is documents a process that we already use. So with that, I'll ask for a vote for approval. All those in favor? It passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second proposed revision relates to the current ACC requirement that owners and their contractors provide a three-dimensional drawing of the front elevation of the proposed home in conjunction with the permit approval process. I wanted to go through a little bit of the history of this particular provision. For a number of years, some ACC members had requested three-dimensional drawings as an additional tool to help in the evaluation of permit applications. These members felt that 3D renderings, particularly of the front elevation, would give a more accurate depiction of the exterior of a residence, and also it would give the ACC staff an opportunity, a better record visually of what was approved, and ultimately to compare that with the as-built conditions of the home. Effective on September 1st of 2020, the ACC implemented a requirement that all permit applications include a 3D elevation of the front facade of the home as part of the permit approval process. After implementation of this rule, over the following months, a number of contractors had expressed some concerns regarding, one, the difficulty of obtaining 3D elevations, and second, the associated cost with these 3D elevations. So this group of contractors had brought the issue to both the ACC as well as to the board, and there were a number of meetings held to discuss this provision and how it could best be evaluated. One of the things that the board wanted to do was really consider a cost-benefit analysis as part of this process. Given the cost that we were discovering related to 3D renderings, we wanted to make sure that it was providing a sufficient benefit to the process and to the ACC to help their evaluation. The ACC was very proactive in trying to work with the builders and find a reasonable solution to this process to fairly address the concerns of both parties. And the ACC has ultimately determined that 3D elevations are not absolutely necessary to evaluate all permit applications. And instead, they have determined that ultimately the ACC believes it appropriate to require 3D elevations only on an as-needed basis. There certainly may be particular concerns that arise regarding the aesthetics or appearance of a proposed home, and this will give the ACC that tool to require additional either 3D renderings, photographs, or any other visual enhancements in the event that the ACC feels it's particularly necessary. In terms of the language itself, we use the term the ACC in its sole discretion may require 3D views to give a little bit more latitude to the ACC so that they can work with the contractor to obtain specifically what they need, as it may not necessarily be an architectural three-dimensional rendering. It could be a photograph, it could be additional information, marketing brochures, or anything else that may give the ACC additional visual information to help evaluate any given permit. So we think this revised provision meets the needs of both parties without unduly providing additional expense to contractors and the property owners ultimately. So we think this is a good resolution. The ACC has approved this provision on its December 3rd meeting and has recommended approval, as it will allow the ACC to use this tool as it needs.
Yeah, I'll need a motion to approve changes to Section 5, Construction Design Standards, subsection A, Exterior Aesthetics, of the Residential Construction Handbook as proposed by the Architectural Control Committee.
Rick, I don't know, your microphone might have been off. Can't hear a word you
No,
said.
did
Something
you
about
have
the
a
microphone.
question?
Your microphone's off.
I'm soliciting the motion.
Sue made it.
What's the
Sue made a
motion?
motion.
I got a second.
Pat seconded. So comments, discussion? Yes, Steve.
What's the motion? Your mic was off. I didn't hear what you said.
The motion was to approve changes to Section 5, Construction and Design Standards, subsection A, Exterior Aesthetics of the Residential Construction Handbook as proposed by the Architectural Control Committee.
Thank you.
No problem. Discussion? No discussion. Okay. So,
Good job, ACC.
good job, ACC. There's a good discussion. All in favor? It passes 7-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so way back in January, we committed to the community very early on to establish an Asian Carp Committee, and it consisted of Carla Johnson and Pat White, Marty Inkrot, and Sue Kovar. And oh, by the way, they've been reporting to you every single month since then. So this would be our monthly report to the village about the Asian carp. The floor is yours, Carla.
Well, and I'll start with my standing joke these days. You know, we also have this problem with the black vultures out at Kahiti, and so we're just trying to figure out a way to train the vultures to eat the carp, and we think maybe we'll be onto something. But anyway, in lieu of that, we do have an update from Representative Tim Burchett's office. And as you may remember, Representative Tim Burchett is very committed to this work against the Asian carp migrating into the upper Tennessee River Basin and our lakes and rivers here. So on December 8th, the U.S. House of Representatives passed Senate Bill 1811, and included within its 369 pages is provision of critical funding and resources to the Tennessee and Cumberland River basins. The bill is expected to be signed into law with no problem by the Senate. Then we'll go to rulemaking, where the Department of the Interior will propose the execution and allocation of the authorized projects in the bill, which we'll talk about in a second. The proposed plans will be open for public comment for a limited time after the Senate signs the law. The bill and action updates will be posted to the Asian Carp page in the news tab of the TVPOA website after today's meeting. Specifically, this legislation includes language to open support to include all 6 subbasins of the Mississippi River and its tributaries, and important, perhaps most important to us, is it includes the creation of a pilot program with up to 10 projects to be carried out in the Tennessee and/or Cumberland River watersheds. It provides $25 million for this purpose. It also creates a Fish and Wildlife Service Asian Carp Eradication Program to provide financial assistance to the states in the amount of $4 million per year for years 2021 through 2025. So it's not just a single one-time allocation. It does include allocations for the next 5 years after that. Congressman Burchett's legislative director, Kelsey Wolfgram, provided the following statement to Tellico Village. Once Senate Bill 1811 is signed into law, Representative Burchett's office will continue to be engaged in advocating for funding and programs to benefit Tennessee and to prevent the spread of Asian carp. And the reason I tell you about Kelsey's statement is because many of us at Tellico Village have been writing letters to government agencies and elected officials and asking them to take specific actions like this one to help prevent the migration of Asian carp into Tennessee rivers and lakes. So I am asking you now to please take the time to send a letter to Representative Burchett's office to thank him and Kelsey Wolfgram for their work in getting this bill passed in the House. Their contact information is also found on the TVPOA website. So last week, the first meeting, you may remember we talked about in our last update, Governor Bill Lee's Asian Carp Advisory Commission that had been formed. And last week they had their first meeting with the live stream on YouTube, and it is recorded and is there for you to watch. And it's actually really pretty interesting watching. It's not, you know, one of those meetings where you feel like you're watching paint dry. The TWRA's presentation is especially good, and Keith Sanderson, as you may know, who has been a real champion for this effort, said to me that he felt like it was the most comprehensive explanation of the issue and the science. So I would encourage you to go to that. The link will be on our website to that YouTube presentation of that advisory commission meeof So, and it was a 90-minute meeting, but it's pretty easy if you don't want to watch the entire meeting. But again, it was really good. And it was all of the commissions who are part of that, or the agencies that are part of that. And so they all made presentations. But the TWRA one is obviously specifically pertinent to Tellico Village and was very comprehensive in its explanation. So also a summary of that meeting is posted to the Stop Silver Carp in Tennessee Facebook page. And I've mentioned before that a great way to stay informed on this topic is to follow that Stop Silver Carp in Tennessee Facebook page. The administrators do a great job of posting current information and links to important developments in the efforts to keep Asian carp out of Tennessee waterways. That information, you can see the title of that Facebook page and you can search it. It's easy to find. And if you just click follow or like, then you'll get those notifications in your news feed so you can see when they add new information. That's also on the TVPOA website. So some key takeaways from the first advisory commission meeting is that TVA has been pushing forward with an environmental assessment of various types of barriers. 2, TWRA is removing millions of pounds of Asian carp in West Tennessee, but they are not seeing new instances of upstream migration in East Tennessee. That's the good news. And they have been refining models for barrier effectiveness in their work in those waterways. The WRDA bill being shepherded by Representative Burchett is out of committee with $25 million allocated for barriers on Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. That's what we just talked about, but they did discuss that in the advisory commission meeting. And a plan to undertake an economic impact study and form Mississippi River Fisheries Council to attract additional funding to fight Asian carp is underway. So, again, be sure to visit the TVPOA website, click on Asian carp under the news tab, and then follow the Stop Silver Carp in Tennessee Facebook page, and keep those letters going to our elected officials and government agencies to keep the subject top of mind for them. We must work together to keep Asian carp out of Tellico Lake. And that's my update.
Bruce?
Yeah, this past week in the Lions Club meeting, we had water. We had water come, and Mr. Jim Hockey, who is in water, and he made an excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. It's quite different than the one that we got from Dr. Joseph.
Yes.
And I would encourage you, if you can, to make arrangements for him to come and address this board.
Will do.
Because he gives an excellent, from a, not from a fear standpoint, but more of a scientific standpoint. So
We can set him up for the next
think it
time
would
we
be
do a carp
Yeah,
report.
I'll reach out to him.
Yeah.
he did a great job. You'll just have to remind him to pare it down a little, because his presentation's 4 hours long. So
Oh my
you might want it to be smaller, obviously, but I think he would do a good job and show where we need to go without striking fear, you know. So,
Right, and I
Was it
thank you.
seriously 4 hours?
he says it was, but that wasn't to us.
Oh, okay, good.
I'll get that information from you,
Yeah.
Bruce, and we'll invite him to come and give an update to our property owners.
He did a great job.
Thank you. I did want to say, if you go to that meeting of the advisory commission, there, at the very beginning of it, they go around and introduce each member of the commission and tell their affiliation and their expertise. And so it's great to have that panel working on this problem.
Okay. Any other questions for Carla? Anything from outside? Nope. Okay. So, financial update.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a high level, another very good month for the village, and you'll see it, throughout my presentation here. So, in general, the assessed lots were basically right at plan. POA lots sold. Right now, we're at 135. So, I think we did the right thing by increasing Beth's target for next year's budget, because the activity of POA lot sales has just been incredible. So we're 91 favorable. Have really seen no degradation in the collections that we anticipated earlier in the year. The total paying lots, we're at 6,193, so we're a little bit better than budget due to those POA lot sales. So you'll see on the assessment side, we're basically right where we should be. On the headcount front, I know Chris Carter and folks are desperately, continuing to try to fill positions. All year long, we've basically run through about 7 open positions at any given time. So, you'll see that favorability on the expense side. In Public Works, like I said, the activity just continues. On property transfers, we're favorable to budget year-to-date, 517 transfers. Last month, that was 450 favorable. So I think December activity looks to be about the same. So we will hit that one out of the park. New home permits were favorable, 69. Tank installations were favorable, 50. And water and sewer gallon usage, both on the revenue side and cost of service, are favorable primarily due to volume. And golf was a fantastic November, and I know Chris and the boys are getting tired, but I hope this weather clears up so you guys can get out and do some more
Tell them
golf.
they're not allowed to be tired.
But overall, they're at 22,834 rounds favorable to budget. They are, I think for the first time ever, most likely going to exceed 100,000 rounds for the year. So that's at least a 24% increase year over year. So outstanding work on the golf front.
So is that a historical high for the village?
I believe so.
100,000?
I'm gonna go back
Wow.
through, I've got access to all the rounds reports from the last probably 15 years.
That's stupendous.
Yeah. Docks and RVs, obviously the docks, still have high demand. I think there's quite a few on the list waiting still. There's folks on the list for moving docks. Certainly that demand is not eased up, and I think the renewal letters either just went out or are going out. Same with RV, still a little bit of work here to do with Mitzi and Clayton on the secured lots. And then on the rec side, month to date, you'll see later on, rec memberships are down a little bit. That continued trend due to COVID. And, the rate of decline has eased up a little bit, but, something that we continue to keep an eye on. Next slide. So here overall, our revenue, we're favorable to budget by a little over $1 million, and we're favorable on expense, almost $1 million. So year-to-date net income, we're favorable, $2 million to budget. And I'll talk about some timing on some expense things, but December is shaping up to be a good month as well. And if I could put these, I know from a high level, kind of put this in perspective, I really look at that revenue drivers as kind of higher activity in the village. So user fees for golf is up, utilities, higher usage, up, building activity is up, and you'll see that in ACC, property transfers. So I can't point to some inorganic reason why we're not hitting our revenue numbers. It really is driven by tremendous amount of activity. Unfortunately, we've got to cover some shortfalls in rec, but on the revenue front, it's been good. On the expense side, there's some favorability that you'll see on the maintenance, salaries and benefits, and other. And its general themes, the maintenance, a little bit of timing due to some wet well work. Salary and benefits, I'll talk about that a little bit more. It's mostly timing of, the open positions. And then kind of other, which is more gain on the sale from POA lot sales. So again, nothing out of the ordinary on the expense side. So things are just hitting in our favor this year. Next slide, please. So if I look at the revenue detail, like I said, the assessments are basically right on. Late fees, that continued offset on the bad debt expense. You'll see golf, 426,000 favorable to budget. So again, outstanding.
Excuse me a second.
Yes, Pat.
I've seen some communications floating around the village, heard some people talking, and then if particularly we're looking at golf. Actual 2,850 compared to budget 2425 for, like you said, a 426. That's not profit, is it?
Wait, say that again?
So at the end of the year, like last year, what were we, 1.6, 1.8 million subsidy for golf?
Correct.
That increase is not meaning we have done away with that subsidy and we're in the black.
No,
No.
no.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because there's some people that are misinterpreting the increase in golf rounds, the increase in golf revenue as being, we're out of the woods.
No,
Okay,
no. Now, I
doing
answered-
lots better, right?
Correct.
Kicking the can down the road, just doing a wonderful job, and thank you for everybody that's making that number positive, because I haven't seen that number positive in 3 years on a monthly basis. This is one of the first.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we were conservative, but we tried to be more realistic when we set the budgeted rounds, considering what we got impacted with the rollout of the annual rounds. But the budgeted rounds were higher than the 2019 actual.
Yeah.
It's just, like you said, Pat, due to COVID. Yes,
See
Steve?
you. Steve?
I'd like to just adjust what my fellow board member said, Pat, on out of the woods. We've got a subsidy for golf, and what this means is our subsidy just won't be as great because number of rounds are greater than budget. But we still have subsidies in excess of $1.5 million when you throw in capital and everything. So the subsidy still exists, it's just not as great because of the usage of the facilities.
Yeah, and this being a pay-to-play, in other words, our assessment fee goes into taking care of the basic amenity, but then this is the pay-to-play part. So the more we play on Tellico Village golf courses versus Wind River, Rarity Bay, et cetera, the greater the revenue generated, the less the subsidy's got a potential of being. And again, you have to control expenses on that side, I know, but if you don't generate the revenue, you're not ever going to control the subsidy.
Correct.
And the same applies to the wellness center, rec memberships, and utilization of the yacht club restaurant.
Yeah, and I was just going to throw in there, every time you go to one of the other area restaurants, which we all have a right to do, and I love their food, and I love the ambiance and going and meeting all my friends at the restaurant, but every time you eat outside of Tellico Village, you're not helping that subsidy.
Correct.
That we all pay for through the assessment fee. Okay.
And specifically, it's the yacht club.
Yeah, buddy.
But to me, the thing that this year I think has proven to me is, especially on the golf side, our expense load tends to be very much, I'll call it step variable to be kind, but we could take a lot of rounds on those courses, and to your point, Pat, the more the community supports our own course, it'll help lower, not get rid of, but help lower the subsidy. And to me, it was a great stress test on what capacity we have.
Absolutely.
So another good thing to follow up on that, this is the first year that we've had golf merchandise where we're managing and owning the pro shops. That has been terrific. We are 46,000 favorable on revenue, and last month we were at 29. So all the pro shops have done a great job. I noticed in the announcements that Casey, I think, earned a 2020 PGA Marketer of the Year. So, he especially, I think, likes the sales and announcements for the pro shop, but that has been a great success this year. On the rec side, here's the downside to the impact of COVID with rec. We gave up about $150,000 in revenue when we suspended rec memberships for about 2 months. And then the lower memberships have really resulted in that remaining $118,000. On the water and sewer side, we're favorable across the board, $369,000, again, mostly due to volume. Installed tanks were favorable, $382,000, and we're 50 installs above budget. I did, per the board's request, split out docks and RVs. So dock is dock and gas docks. And I've talked a little bit about kind of how that breaks out between those two. But docks are favorable, 48,000, and then RV, obviously, with the lower lease percentage, we're slightly unfavorable.
And I thank you very much for that, because what that was doing is that when you were looking at docks and RVs and saying you're generating this much in dock revenue, then this monthly report would come up and it would show you were negative.
Yep.
And so the message that we're sending is very mixed. How do you generate positive revenue for docks and then at the end of the month show? But by splitting it out, you show where the difference is.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. On ACC permits, we're 69 permits greater than budget, so 200,000 favorable year to date. To me, that's kind of obviously it's ACC volume, but I think a good part of it is the investment that the board made in additional ACC staff to really keep on top of the activity in the village. Food service, we're favorable, 116,000, and that's the Kahidi restaurant food service. And then other, what's really in other is property transfer fees of 104,000, higher interest income related to our higher cash balances of 22,000. We've got the donation for the Kahidi portico heating of 59,000, and then we have a $30,000 COVID relief grant that was applied for and received that's flowing through there for a total of 242,000 of other income. So kind of a high-level breakdown of that $1.1 million. Next slide, please. Here's just a graphical representation of kind of where we've gone throughout the year. Obviously, the anomaly of HA5 kind of shifted from the month of May into more June, July. You'll see December, we are expecting a budgeted decrease in some of the activity. Obviously, the water activity with irrigation shutting down and some normal seasonal activity like golf should ease up a little bit. We also have some of the, I'll talk about it on the expense side, some catch up to do on the maintenance like the wet wells, but not a lot of, timing delays into December. So I'm still expecting a strong month, but it should be a little bit less than what we've experienced year to date. On the expense side, I talked a little bit about maintenance. We're favorable 304,000. The biggest driver of that, which will be picked up mostly in December, a little bit into 2021, is some of the wet well work. I know Tenasseee Cove and Coyote basically started and finished up early December. We'll make sure that that all gets accrued and recorded in December when we close the books for the year. Chad and his team is still working on some main lift station work. We'll see if they can get that further along by year end. It may lag into January, so I'll just have to work with the guys to accrue what's been done in December and continue to get that done. Salary and benefits, again, about 7 open positions throughout the year, which is roughly about 250,000 of that 472,000 favorability. We have about 40,000 that was, if you remember, Parker talked to you all about tax credits related to the CARES Act. We had about 40,000 that came through from the delay in the merits. It seems like a long time ago when COVID first started, but we were trying to be conservative and see what the impact the pandemic was going to have. We had some favorability on group insurance, which Parker also talked about a few months ago, as well as favorability for about 35,000 for workers' comp. Bad debt, again, the offset was in revenue. Legal and professional, we're a little bit, I like to call out my friend Kevin here. We're a little bit unfavorable. Some of that is due to the wellness center roof legal work for about 30,000. Contract labor, we're, basically, it looks like we're right at plan, but if you go at the department level, Public Works has been favorable on contract labor for some of the groundwork, but Simon has been unfavorable on the rec side due to his staffing needs for COVID. On the yacht club management fee, we're about $33,000 unfavorable year to date. AWE did have a loss for the month of about 15. I think it's kind of how the whole COVID's impacted the restaurant business, how Thanksgiving worked. So I know Andy's focused on that for just having a strong December. Depreciation expense has been really due to the CapEx delay. Cost of service is all volume driven. Taxes, license, and insurance, that's really driven by the higher D&O insurance from earlier in the year. A little bit unfavorable on golf merchandise cost of service, mostly related to the higher sales. And then other favorable of 353. The biggest portion of that is the gain on the sale of POA lots for 163,000. There's some software expense like the GIS system of about 60,000 that I think Jeff has deferred and is kind of looking at more closely. So again, you know, a lot of things have worked to our favor. There's not one thing that, in my opinion, has been, you know, pushed back, delayed. You know, things are working very well this year. It's just, you know, obviously continued focus. Next slide. So here, real quick, you'll see obviously the good months that we've had in August, September, October, November. You know, very consistent. We have a little bit of degradation, if you call it that, in December. I do expect that to happen as we kind of catch up on some of the maintenance work and some of the user-based fees ease up a little bit due to the holidays. Here's the, I'm not going to go through this in detail. I know it's kind of an eye chart, but when you do look at this trend, it's very telling about the consistent nature of our financial performance throughout all of 2020. You'll see some activity, obviously, with the yacht club management fee, but overall, a very good year so far. Next slide, please. So here on the water and sewer rate volume, you'll see we've got obviously a significant amount of volume variance coming through. We've had about 111,000 of higher warranty work, and you'll see that also driving the higher expense as a one-for-one offset, and a few like other variances coming through on both the revenue and the cost side.
Could I disturb you for a second?
Sure.
And Shannon, could I get you to go back a slide, the income statement trend? I've been looking at this while you jumped ahead there. Let's go down to rec. There you go. Recreation, starting in January is 68, 79, 71. And then we hit the COVID impact and we shut the recreation department down for April and May. And then came up through the government guidelines and Simon and the Recreation Advisory Committee and all of his staff came up with a way to open it back up again. At that point, as I recall, see how we got this exactly, we gave people that were expiring throughout the course of the year, a 2-month or 3-month or whatever it was.
2 months.
2 months, and then redo the next year and pick up the 2 months. So we virtually had no income on those 2 months. And then if I look at June, July, August is 59, then it drops to 57, it drops to 54, and then it's 54 again in November. So it's not a drop off the cliff downward trend, but it's a steady decline in recreation revenue coming in. And you mentioned about 3 slides back, the contract labor. So part of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just remembering all of this, and it just hit me. So we've gone from the 79 value back in February, March, when that is typically when we're running full bore, lots of members, inside activity, outside activities to a minimum. We work out, we do the things inside, and then we had COVID, and then we start this decline. We have paid a ton of money, have we not, on this, it's not, I don't call it contract labor, temps.
Well, they're
Temporary-
actually contract temps.
Yeah, contract
They're coming
temps.
to us through an agency.
Yeah, and when they come to us to an agency, we pay their normal hourly rate like we normally would, but then we also pay an agency fee, so it costs us more, correct?
Yes.
So we don't have the members, we're losing members, we're paying more for the hourly rate, right? And we can't take in as many members as we had before, so we're, again, on this downward spiral of running our recreation department out of business. But to this board, what were our two choices? To keep it open with more expense, or shut it down. Yeah, and those are the only two choices we had. In the meantime, and again, we go back to the social media of Tellico Village. I've been reading on there the last month or so about we had an employee manager resign, correct? Got another job, went somewhere else.
That's correct.
We then replaced that person with an internal that was part-time. We put them in as full-time. And then we replaced that part-time with another full-time that we'd been working with the last year as an intern, correct? Yeah,
I believe so.
yeah, he gave us a report on
Yeah.
the family rates and all that. So what we ended up with is we ended up with this same number of people, one part-time to full-time, another one intern to full-time. So we got a half actually new headcount. And the reason we had to do that is a regular employee as prone to stay, from your perspective in finance, you're seeing the bills come across, are they as prone to stay long-term as a temporary employee, or do temporaries turn over more?
Temps turnover more.
Significantly more,
Yes,
don't they?
and you pay the premium, so,
And you pay the premium, and you have to retrain the guy that you retrained last
Absolutely.
week again, and you're probably gonna retrain him again. So you've got to have that trainer in place.
correct.
Okay, I just want to make that clear, because this has been going around, there's been a lot of confusion about why did we do this, and I don't think I can make it any clearer. I will challenge you guys to clear me up, because sometimes I
No, yeah, I think you're pretty much on target. But if you recall, one of the things we did when we formulated the budget for next year is we took out all those contract heads and we put in part-timers that work for us,
Exactly.
which is a cost save.
Exactly. But the ultimate point that I want to make is we only have two choices. One is to keep this open for the benefit of us, board members, and all property owners, that we can use this recreation facility to enhance our health, right? Or the second one is, for all practical purposes, you're working for a business here that is spiraling out of business.
Well, and in fact,
We should shut it down.
if you look at, a couple slides further into the pack, we continue to bleed membership.
I know.
Both individual and family.
So if this was not a community, a property owners association subsidizing recreation through this
Absolutely.
bad time, if it was my business, I'd have shut it down in June.
Yeah.
Closed, locked the doors, I'm sorry, here's your money back. But we're not.
We're not.
Okay. Now you can skip ahead, Shannon.
So Winston, I have a question for you. Do you know what the status of the UVC units are for the wellness center?
I do not, no, I do not.
Okay.
I can check on that, find out.
Yeah, would you check on that and get back to us?
I believe, Rick, the delay, last time I checked with Jeff, it was on the manufacturer side actually getting the equipment. It's already been ordered, and I think like everything right now, it's just, it's on back order.
Okay.
And Pat, on the rec side, you did bring up a good point. I think what we're seeing now in rec membership, as it continues to drop, you have to realize everyone's annual contract with the wellness center is not on a calendar basis.
Right.
So as every month comes up, you've got annual renewals, you've got monthly renewals, and I think the base of steady customers for Simon and the rec folks, people have kind of figured out and adjusted to life with COVID and how to work out, or in my case, not work out. But, yeah,
Is that a true confession?
it is. My wife will tell you. But really, I think a lot of folks that had annual memberships that say got renewed in November are kind of waiting out the storm till probably springtime. And then, hopefully things will kind of adjust back and he'll be hit with a bolus of membership again.
Yeah,
So-
so-
Well, and in fact, all through, since we reopened, we've steadily seen declines in the membership totals.
But, that long explanation I gave on this downward spiral, I in no way want to have anybody think that I'm being critical of them not joining or not renewing. That is your personal choice, And whatever your condition is, whatever makes you comfortable, that's what you should do. If you don't want to go inside and exercise or get your heart rate up or breathe heavier, that's your choice. The point I wanted to make, though, is that we are losing revenue. Expenses are staying the same or going up, right? So the negative is growing, and it doesn't look like there's any relief in sight nearly, unless this vaccine works out and we get to that, what do they call that, herd immunity level?
Right.
Well, then at that point, perhaps we will see. So I'm not criticizing anybody for their choice. I'm just saying there's explanation going around about why did you replace these people? Why are you spending more money and you're losing money, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the ultimate choice is to shut it down, and we're not going to do that.
True.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Well, in fact, that head count is necessary to meet the government standards for COVID.
Sure. Right.
It's not like we get a choice.
Right, and you do save money typically on a contractor conversion if the demand is, like you said, Rick, longer term.
Right.
So, okay. Next slide, please, Shannon. Thanks. So on the golf front, obviously, we talked about the outstanding news with golf rounds. I just want to point out here, if you look at the variance column on the far right, Tokwa, almost 7,000 rounds favorable. Tanasi, almost 8,000 rounds favorable. Kahidi, almost 4,500. So outstanding course play throughout the village for a total of 281 rounds.
May I interrupt you again?
Yes, sir.
The question was out a few minutes ago, and Chris just sent me a text message. The all-time previous high rounds was in 2006,
And it was?
92,258.
Well, we're already beyond that.
Yeah, and our low was in, check this out, I didn't realize this, 2018, only 2 years ago was our ultimate low. And
Yeah,
it
we
was
don't wanna-
67,722.
That was a bad year.
So, yeah, real bad year. Yeah, and that's where that, you think we're making a lot of money, but you're still paying for that back there.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. You remember I'm from Chicago, you always back a winner. Cubs, Sox, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so that's the member rounds, and next slide, please. On the guest rounds, and this is a great news as well. I mean, obviously, people coming here to play with COVID, is outstanding. And again, it's across all three courses. So almost 700 at Tokwa, about 1,100 at Tanasi, and about 1,800 at Kahidi, which is normal. I think Kahidi has typically gotten more guest play. So almost 3,600.
Here I am interrupting you again. And now Carla's over here laughing
want me to
at
be cruel?
Bruce has started laughing at me 10 minutes ago.
So well this morning.
But to understand that report there.
This is all orchestrated.
Yeah, and I told anybody I was not going to interrupt anymore, but I've got this last meeting, and now next year I'll start. So wonder why Tokwa is the least when it is the most played golf course.
The least, because it's harder.
No, the least number of guest rounds. Why is that? because it is the highest rounds golf course. It is the most requested, the highest played golf course we have. Guests can't get on there, right? So then Tanasi should be the second because it is the second highest, and Kahiti's the third, right? So it matches. If anybody out there is wondering why there's such a difference between the three, that's why. Toka is requested first by members, second is and Tanasi, and third is Kahiti. And if you don't want guests to play and take a member's tee time, get on Chelsea and book a tee time. They can't have a member guest.
Which is the conundrum, because from a yield perspective,
You make lots more money. Yeah, I know.
absolutely.
I know.
Okay, next slide, please. You're throwing me off my game here, Pat.
I know, it's on purpose. You remember that conversation we had at lunch?
So cart rounds, obviously, COVID, impacted how we stack up carts and back in the days when we had screens between them and single cart riders, really helped the cart rounds, favorable 14,353. So overall, you'll see how we come up to the 22,834 rounds favorable. Next slide, please. So here, we talked about this, so I won't belabor it. Obviously, on the family membership, we're down to 602 versus a budget of just over 1,000. And month over month, we're down 32. On the individual side, for the month over month, we're down 23 memberships, and we're down 368 compared to a budget of 588. And that downward trend, we did plan for some of that to continue. And obviously, Simon, I keep him pretty close these days to be conservative as we go into 2021, because to Steve's point, you don't know what you don't know, and I would rather go gently into thy good night, and
Wow.
you like that?
As he waxes poetic.
But that's pretty final. We gotta go.
Rage against dying of the light.
Okay, and with that, I believe Parker is joining us via Zoom, and,
Before you go there.
Yes, sir.
It just blew by me.
Microphone.
That was some song, right? Blew by you?
No,
Blue
microphone.
Blew by you, something. Anyway, going back to the non-financial indicators,
yes, sir.
I'd like to see something added to that, if you could. And that is people always ask me, how many homes do we have here in the village? I know you've got new lots sold, and new home permits, but nowhere do we seem to advertise or keep track of how the village is growing, home-wise.
Yep.
Could you add that?
Yeah,
So that
actually, even from a historic perspective, I believe one of y'all, like that southern, had requested that in the 2021 budget as kind of a metric for the growth in the village. Beth tracks a lot of that, so.
I didn't know if it was yours or hers, but somewhere along the line, we need to be able to see, at least on a quarterly basis, how we're doing. How's the village growing? Because people do this unofficial conversion in their mind that says, we got 5,000 homes. Whoa, we're up to 10,000 people. They take two, because we don't really do a census here, but it gets us in the ballpark. So we kind of need to know how we're doing. And somewhere along the line, I'd like to see, how does that compare to the number of sellable, total buildable lots that we have in the village?
So we do list that in two different places. Every single month, Holly provides an ACC report that shows you how many homes are completed, how many are in construction. It's put in the gram and posted on the ACC page on the website. Also, the
Well, wait a
newsletter.
minute. That's for ACC. That's how many are in the hopper. What I
No,
wanna
it's
know-
also total builds. It's
Does it give you
everything.
total?
Total's
Yeah, it
there
gives you.
as well.
Also, in the POA newsletter, which just came out and is in the mail, the very back page always gives you an update on how many homes are completed. So we do publish it in a couple places.
So what would be actually nice, and I kind of agree with Bruce, is I'd like to see it all in one place.
Yeah. I'd like to-
So basically, take her data and, lay it into the non-financial indicators. just so we know what the total number of homes in the village is
Yeah.
on any given day.
That's not a problem, because Holly gives me all the data
Yeah.
for the home permits and all that good stuff.
I
so.
like to look at things and find them all in one place.
And then we could make
So
the
then it's no big
conversion
deal
that,
to
oh,
this
that means
allocated
about,
report.
because, you know,
Well,
when we have discussions with people in the county commission, it's so, you know, how do you compare to Lenore City? How do you compare? So you can kind of get a feel for it if we know. So,
Well, and I think that we stopped using 2 as the estimate for population a
we
while
use
back.
2.1 now?
No, I think it's actually more like 1 3/4 or 1.8.
Yeah.
1.8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a couple
See, I'd
questions
have thought
online.
during COVID especially it's going more because we got families here now
Right.
that we brought back, you know, they're coming back to live with their parents and bringing their grandkids with them.
So we have
Yeah,
questions from
about
outside.
6.
What are they?
All right, first question from Michael is, do we have a schedule that shows the net difference between revenue and expenses for each revenue generating component prior to allocation of fee assessments?
I'm not sure what he's asking.
He's wanting to
Well, that's
know,
I mean, we look at
he's
that when we
almost
do the
treating them as
budget.
profit centers. He wants to know how each one fared before they got their before they got their
Oh,
subsidy.
Schedule shows the notes.
well, I think basically they'll all be showing losses.
Steve has a comment on that.
Steve?
If the individual would take the financial statements as reported every month by the FAC, they could do a simple cash flow analysis by department to see what cash is required to subsidize it. And then you need to factor in then the capital spending on top of that. And that'll get them a ballpark as to what the subsidies are per each area, such as the restaurants, wellness, golf.
Okay.
Well, am I reading this correctly? It says the schedule shows the net difference between revenue and expense for each revenue generating component prior to allocation of a fee assessment. That was all done October through November when we took this budget apart line by line and had 37,312 meetings.
Yes. Like what Steve said is 100% correct. We lay it out that way for the village
Yeah.
in our communication of the, like in this case, the 2021 budget. But Steve's correct. The detailed financials, like at the department level, I send out to all the FAC participants, and that would give you the revenue and expense for that department. You've got to convert that to a cash flow. And then the piece that's not in our financials at the department level is the capital demand for that department, which is not that hard to back into, so.
Right, but if I throw the component in there in the last 4 words or 5 words prior to allocation of fee assessment, that was done in order for golf, recreation, et cetera, to calculate what that fee is going to be or what it needed to be.
Yes.
Steve? Steve?
They're talking about
Yeah, the only other thing that is not, you can't find from that analysis, you'd have to go to the balance sheet, is to see what cash is being either put in or taken out of each reserve. That's why you gotta look at your budget book and analyze it from top to bottom, and you'll get all the answers in the budget book.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then.
Is there another comment from outside?
There's another question under the other, so I'm gonna wait on that.
Okay. Go for it.
Is Parker on?
Yes,
Okay,
Parker's on.
I hope I'm online and I hope I am not muted.
You're great,
Am I coming in
Parker.
okay?
You're great.
Okay. If we'll go to the slide, it says 2020 capital plan project variances through December 2nd board meeting. Obviously, this is the 16th, but the numbers haven't changed, and reason being there were no additional funding requests received this month. And so this is basically the same. And if we'll go to the next, well, before we leave the first page, let me remind you that most of the unfavorable variance is from unbudgeted projects. And you see several of those on this first page, those being the golf simulator, the Kahidi Community Center patio heating, although that was fully funded by private funding, so that didn't take any POA cash. Then some TrackMan accessories and ACC utility vehicles. So all of those were unbudgeted and contribute toward the unfavorable variance. If you go to the next slide, this has to spill over to 2 pages now because we've got so many projects. The grapple truck was the big one. We had planned on buying that next year, but just simply couldn't wait and get through the brush season without it. And that piece of equipment is performing extraordinarily well. One really good piece of equipment can do the work of 2 or 3 poor pieces of equipment, and I think that's what we're seeing, what's been reported out of Public Works Department. So that $161,000 spent a little bit earlier than we had planned, but money well spent. The UVC air purification system at the Wellness Center, that's in progress, but not yet complete. And that was unbudgeted, but certainly well justified. And then go a little bit further down, the lighting for the Tocqueville Clubhouse parking lot and the exhaust fan makeup, all those were unbudgeted, contributing to the overall unfavorable variance. Now, the line right before the subtotals and summary totals, shingle roof for the Wellness Center. I picked up the $304,000 budget for this year, which had originally been for completion of the metal roof. The shingle roof for the Wellness Center is coming in at $290,000, so a little bit under this year's budgeted amount. We thought at the time this chart was put together that there was a chance that roof would be started in December and maybe even finished at or near the end of December. Turns out that's not going to happen. It will commence January the 4th, we're now told. And so with that, I am going to push that budget money into the 2021 budget and report against that as such. In fact, there are several, probably about 3 or maybe 4 projects that will get pushed into next year. And I'll comment on the others here in just a moment. But the roof is the biggest one. It seemed to make sense at the time to treat it as a 2020 project, but based on new information, it's all going to happen in 21. The budget money just needs to be pushed along with that. So, but with that, we were just over halfway through the 2020 capital plan, and we're over budget primarily due to the unbudgeted projects. Just one comment, replacement of 2 flat roofs at the Wellness Center is budgeted in 21 for $92,000, already been authorized, and we will report that as part of the 2021 capital plan variance.
Is that your issue?
And was there a question?
I did, but you cleared it up. I wanted to make sure that you noted that 290 does not include the money for the flat roofs.
That's correct. That's a separate project, will be reported separately. Although I understand they will be done roughly concurrently. Start about the 4th of January and complete the whole thing probably early February, maybe mid-February. So if we'll go to the next slide then, and even this slide, based on new information, some of it as recent as the last day or two, the Kahidi pool gate security for $10,000. Simon does have quotes on that, but realistically, the work is going to commence in 21. So he's going to come forth in January with a funding request, and that being the case, I'm going to push that budget number into 21 as well, and then report it in 21. Similarly, the variable frequency drives and controls for the main lift station, that has undergone some further review by PSAC, and I understand that they're looking at some other alternatives, but Jeff has asked that $68,000 budget number be pushed into 21 as well. So in fact, I've already done that. Y'all have not seen that revised 21 capital plan because it still has some work yet to go, but that's going to be pushed into 21. Water meter replacements, there's $43,000 remaining in this year's budget. I can't imagine that we'll spend all of that by the end of the year, but there will be additional water meter replacements between now and 12/31. So the carryover number into 21 will be at least $300,000 higher. The amount's no longer needed, that is unchanged. The spending in 2020, that's going to be a little bit lower. And then the other numbers, the amounts remaining in the golf deferral, those are pretty much unchanged. Okay, so let's go on then. I think the last slide. This is a summary of our cash position, and with that big $2 million favorable variance on net income, projected cash from that source obviously is much higher than the budget amount of some $668,000. Depreciation is a little bit lower. CapEx will be even lower than what is shown on this page due to additional deferrals. But overall, net cash flow, we're round numbers, $3 million better than budget to date. And if you look at the balance sheet numbers, we're roughly $3 million total cash ahead of last year. So, you know, from a cash standpoint, we're doing very, very well. Now, you know, we can't get too comfortable with that because a lot of that money is already committed for next year's capital plan, including a fair amount of reserve funds. So, you know, it's not like we're building up huge cash balances or huge reserve balances. We have deferred into next year some of those items, and that is money that will be spent in 21. So with that, I'm pretty well done, but I'll be happy to answer questions.
Bruce?
I just have a comment or two, and that is from a PSAC perspective. They have been working very diligently this last quarter with the Public Works Department to get most of the contracts for work that we do on an annual basis so it'll match up with the budget. In that regard, they have continued some contracts on, just like a couple of months.
Month to month.
Month to month. And they've been working hard, and they tried to get them for today's meeting, but in all likelihood, as you will see, they weren't able to get there, but they will get there in the next few days, and they were wondering as to whether to get them done and then put the contracts in effect, they should ask the board if we would electronically approve those between now and the end of the year. But I think basically in talking to Winston and to Rick is basically, because we have these contracts that continued into the next year, I think we'll bring all of those to the board probably early in January, and then we'll award those contracts and make them retroactive to January 1st. So that those contracts, that's for like right-of-way mowing, for AC, HVAC work, for tank installation, and there seems to be one more that's skipping my mind, road patching maybe or something like that. Those where they give them orders, they will be on an annual basis. And so I guess what I'm trying to prepare you for is look for a deluge of contracts come the next meeting in January.
Fair enough. Any other questions? Okay, can move on to the next agenda item, which would be the certification of the POA board election by the board's election committee, which consists of Steve, Bruce, and Sue English Kovar. And I believe, Sue, you're the chair?
Yes, and so I guess Jessica's not gonna be here to go through any kind of
You're on your own.
I'm on my own, so, I mean, we all know the process that we went through for the election process, and results in November. And so, at this point in time, I'd like to make a motion to certify the results of the 2020 POA board election as recommended by the board's election committee.
And the results were?
The results were... Oh, sorry. The results, and I don't have the
You
numbers.
have the numbers, but you have the order.
I don't have the numbers, but the order of votes received, Pat White, then Rick Blau. Yeah, I know. Bruce is helping me here.
There you go.
And finally, Mike Blackwell, which resulted in retaining both Pat and Rick on our board for the next 3 years. Okay?
So the motion is made. Is there a second? Bruce seconds. Any conversation? Okay.
This is one of those you and I can't vote in, right?
No, I'm abstaining. So, just call for a vote. All in favor? It's 5-0 with 2 abstentions. Although I'd vote for you, Pat. Actually, I think I did vote for you.
I would vote for you too. But as long as you're talking that.
Is that T on that?
As long as you're talking that. Mike Blackwell ran for the board, being president of New Villagers, and I've got the utmost respect for Mike, as does Rick and the other people I've talked to on this board. He gave this community an opportunity to make a choice. Otherwise, it would have just been I walk back in and Rick walks back in, and it should never be that way. We should always be giving the property owners a choice, and I want to personally thank Mike for doing that. It's not easy getting out and campaigning and talking and answering.
Well, especially with COVID.
Yeah, emails and questions, and you know, it was different, but thank you very much, Mike, for doing that.
Okay. So that brings me to, is there anything from outside? Nothing? Okay, so that brings me to other.
I have one. Well,
Pat's got one.
actually, you had a question for another. Yeah,
Our other question from Harry Rutger is, for the other section, what is the status of the Wellness Center roof litigation? Mr. Stevens, I assume?
Yes, Kevin, would you update?
The litigation is ongoing. We have engaged in discovery in the case. We'll be commencing depositions in the coming months and hope to have some resolution in the near term. But for right now, the litigation is ongoing.
Mr. President, you might want to, for those people who didn't pick up at our last board meeting, that what we approved as regarding.
Yeah, actually, I'll add to that, you know, we got through the period whereby there was inspection by the, you know, the defendants in these cases. And when that inspection period ended, we went out for bid and approved, you know, the reconstruction of the roof at the Wellness Center. Based on a lot of, you know, input that we got from experts, we have decided to go back to a shingle roof. And that work will commence on the 4th of January. And it should be done sometime by early February. So I hope that answers his question. So.
Barring good weather.
Well, yeah, January is always an iffy month here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have another.
Okay.
And I'm going to read a statement here because I will get off subject and I don't want to do that. But anyway, if you'll follow along, and Shannon, I'll send you a copy of this for your minutes. What I wanted to address is first of all, starting to remember the good old days of February and March when COVID-19 was entering the U.S. I'm sure we all remember that. And where businesses were shut down, and of all things, we were issued stimulus checks, and we couldn't travel by air because all the airplanes were grounded. Here in Tellico Village, to cite that example, we saw golf groups stop gathering pre- and post-round along with many other precautionary activities. And in Tellico Village, we all followed those government guidelines with a great deal of asking the simple question of why. And it was because we in Tellico Village did not feel the impact of COVID-19 as was being felt in more densely populated areas. Then between March of 20 and today, we've seen the spread of COVID-19 gradually reach out to Tellico Village. But then at the same time, we've also seen the guidelines placed upon us relax. So as it got closer and closer, we get more and more cases, we've seen those guidelines relax. This sequence of events to me seems sort of ironic, and then add to that irony, we're perhaps only days away from being vaccinated. And then guidelines for population groups all over the world have been issued. We have all heard the debates, and we've all seen the news reports of protesters demanding change of those guidelines. We've all seen the success and failures of those implemented guidelines around the world. And we in Tellico Village do not set the guidelines, and we are obligated to follow those guidelines that apply to us. The point I'm making is there have been more COVID-19 cases reported in the last month, and I'm looking at December the 12th to November the 12th to October the 12th. I'm using the 12th as the date because that was the most recent numbers I could get. So in the last month, they were reported in the, let's start over. There have been more COVID-19 cases reported in that last month than there were reported in the first 6 months. And there have been more cases reported in the past month than in the same periods during all of October and November of this year. So now is not the time to relax. Now is also not the time to panic and shut down all Tellico Village facilities as is being done in other parts of the U.S. We Tellico Villagers have been in training actually for over the last 6 months, and it's now time to apply that training. And above all else, we've learned that our friends, our neighbors, and family understand our personal choices of not being part of large social groups or traveling or how we each control our personal exposure to one another. We are in effect at a crossroads of the highest reported COVID-19 cases in our immediate area, and the other part of that crossroad being an long-awaited vaccine. Again, this is not a good time to relax our precautions. We have an obligation to one another in following COVID-19 precautionary guidelines, but we do not have an obligation to control one another. Understand the POA cannot protect you from others or others from you. We urge each of you to follow social distancing guidelines, hygiene guidelines, and mask guidelines. And we urge each of you to be safe during what we hope is the beginning of the end of this pandemic. And simple precautions can add many years of enjoying one another in this community we call Tellico Village. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays for many years to come.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else got another? Okay, just as a wrap up, I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone the happiest of holiday seasons. And I want you to think about it. As we all gather with friends and family during this celebratory time, please protect yourselves and stay safe. I'm sure you all join me in putting 2020 in the mirror and hoping for a better 2021. So happy holidays from me personally and from your board. With that, I adjourn the meeting. We're going to take 5 and then we'll meet in special session. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah,
I sent you that note from Mitzi. I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet, but I forwarded it to you.
okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at my Gmail account yet.
She had a
Yeah,
bunch of, she had a bunch of spreadsheets, so
Perfect.
Call this special session of the board to order. First order of business would be the election of the board president for 2021. And with that, I will turn it over to the CEO, Winston Blazer.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Rick stated, the first order of business is to elect the board president for the year 2021. That being said, is there any questions? All right then, let's just get into it. Nominations for board president. Mr. White.
I will nominate Mr. Blau.
Second.
Mr. Blau, nominated, seconded. Any other nominations? Steve.
I'd like to nominate Carla Johnson for president of the POA board.
Carla nominated.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Marty. Any others? Any other nominations? All right. Seeing no other nominations, Mr. Stevens, I'm going to now ask them to cast their votes. Put it on the little piece of paper. Steve, Marty, you all are instructed to text Mitzi Lane since you're not here in person, and Kevin, if you'll collect the votes, Mitzi, if you will respond to Kevin as he directs you to count those 2 votes, we will have the results in a minute.
Not touch the cup.
Winston,
Yes, sir.
didn't hear who seconded Rick's nomination.
That would
Sue,
be me.
Sue Kovar.
Okay, after counting the ballots and acknowledging the ballots that were sent in from our members participating remotely, Rick Blau will be the president for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, it's now your responsibility for Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer.
Okay, so I'll open nominations for the position of Vice President of the POA Board. Pat?
Sue English Kovar.
I'll second.
Other nominations? Okay. So,
That's not
I'll
fair.
close nominations at this point. I guess I'll ask for a hand vote. All in favor of Sue? So it's 1, 2, 3, 5, and 2, 6, 7. So I'll now entertain nominations for the position of Secretary, and I'll nominate Pat White.
Second.
Any other nominations? The nominations are closed. There's only one candidate, so, hand vote. All in favor of Pat for Secretary? It's unanimous. For the position of Treasurer, I nominate Steve Schneider.
Second.
Any other nominations for the position of Treasurer? Hand vote. You're not voting for yourself, Steve? Oh, there you go. So it's
No, I
unanimous as
wouldn't
well.
trust the work.
So I want to deal with the board liaison assignments. And Carl, I'm going to start with you. I understand that there's been discussion about you not staying with communications. Is that your decision?
Well, there was discussion about that,
Okay.
but I think I changed my mind.
Okay, well, that's fine. I mean,
I'm a woman. No.
well, no, you're
don't say that.
you're entitled to your
I've
pick.
never known a man to change his mind, ever. Right?
Oh, we
No.
just lie about it.
I see. No, that was just, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so.
No, so I just, if it's okay, I would stay there.
So, okay, and Steve, I understand you want to stay with Recreation?
Yeah, for some reason, the RAC and Simon want me to continue on since I've been part of the strategic plan and been there for the last 2 years, so yes.
Okay, so that takes care of communications and it takes care of Recreation. And Bruce, you want to stay with PSAC?
Maybe, yes.
Yes, that takes care of PSAC. Marty, do you want to stay with Finance? Or would you like to change?
Doesn't matter. I'm happy to.
Okay, so Marty will stay with Finance. Golf Advisory Committee. Pat, are you interested in doing that job?
Yeah, I would be very interested, but that would leave an opening on government affairs, so, but yeah, it'd be a good swap.
Okay, and Sue, would you like to be long-range planning?
Yes, I'll do long-range plan.
And Carla, I assume you'll stay with the Marketing Advisory Committee?
Sure.
And, let's see, that leaves Marinas. Pat, you gonna stay with Marinas?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I'll take Government Affairs.
That'd work.
And Sue, you're currently with the Townhouse Association. Do you wish to stay with them?
Did you want them back?
There it is.
Well,
Is there somebody else that wants to do?
the only reason I hesitate is because I'm currently on Communications, Marketing, and Honor Awards, so I
Well,
don't want to
has-
be piggish.
Well, has Marty,
Well,
has
Marty,
Marty done it?
can you do honors awards?
Well,
Yeah,
why, or,
You'd just be the liaison to the honors awards committee to make sure that they stay in line.
that's fine, yeah.
We're a
Okay.
tough bunch.
So you don't have to do honors awards, which you
Well, it's
didn't
not like,
have to do
I
last
was
year.
just gonna say, I was just gonna say that
Well,
it's not,
then,
I
how
mean, that's
about-
the one that has the least number of meetings, so that was the only,
so,
but
well
that's
then,
okay.
does Marty want to take Town Hall?
Do you want to?
I'm really happy to do townhome, it's not a problem.
Okay.
No, and please don't, anybody listening, please don't get the idea, because once they run out of their argument, I was going to volunteer. I thoroughly enjoyed my year on it, and I think Carla did, and I think you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
They're
did.
Okay,
wonderful group of
and
people.
I'm going to take the fire department liaison since Bruce can't. And so that brings us to the committees. Audit Committee. Steve, you're the treasurer, so you have to sit on the Audit Committee.
That's correct.
And I would propose Bruce and Carla as the other two board members
On the audit committee?
on the Audit Committee. Do you guys, are you okay with those assignments?
Sure. Should Steve? No, wait a minute. Who's gonna be on that? You said Steve, so
Steve-
just not
Steve will be-
Marty, so not Marty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Compen-
so, what you got is Bruce stays on, Marty drops off, and Carla, you come in for Marty.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Compensation Committee, it's a 2-year assignment, so Bruce, I'm sorry, you're not eligible.
I'm already on it.
Sue will be entering her second term. Pat, would you do the Compensation Committee next year?
Sure, that's taking your place?
Yes, it would be taking my place. I've served my 2 years.
Sure.
Government Affairs. I'm proposing to leave it exactly the way it was because of the work that's ongoing with that group, which would be myself, Pat, and the Johnson twins.
The Johnson twins.
Perfect.
Don't we look alike?
We're identical.
We are identical twins, true.
The Election Committee, under the bylaws, as president, I have to be on the Election Committee. But I would propose that Sue English Kovar and Pat White also serve on that committee. Do you have any objection to that?
No.
And then, and Kevin Stevens and Winston Blazer are ex officio on that committee. The nominating committee, I would propose Marty, Steve Schneider, and Bruce Johnson. Bruce would normally not be allowed, except he can't run next year. And so I charge him with finding a replacement.
Am I disallowed from serving on that committee?
Yes, you are.
So who do you got there, Rick?
I've got Marty, you, and Bruce.
Okay, I'm all right with that.
And that's because you're in your last year.
And
Yeah, she could, can't.
That was the nominating committee?
Yeah.
that was the nominating
Okay.
committee.
So Steve, Marty, and Bruce, right?
Right.
Steve, Marty,
So
and
go back
Bruce,
to the
yes.
election. Who was on election?
That would be
Pat and
me, Sue, and Pat. And then I'll stay with the 401K committee. I've been on it for a year or so. You know, I kind of know what they're doing. That's it.
So if I have this correct, because I always get confused after 6 months, audit is Carla, Bruce, Steve, and a finance advisory.
That's correct.
Election is Rick, myself, and Sue.
Right?
Compensation is Sue and myself.
That's correct.
Nominating is Steve, Marty, Bruce.
Right.
Government Affairs is the same, Bruce, myself, Rick, and Carla. 401 is you.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So that completes all of the board assignments. There are no other items of business on this special agenda,
Excuse me.
but I will open it to others if there are any. Anybody have anything they want to add at this point? If not,
No, wait a second, I have a question. On the bottom of this,
Oh, Steve's got a question.
yeah, on the bottom of this, we're going to select our ACC meetings, board, HOA
oh, yeah,
representation.
I'm sorry, I meant that. There's a list in the stuff that Shannon sent you of all of the dates of the ACC meetings.
Right.
I've already volunteered to take January since it's right around the corner. And each board member would probably take about 2 months. Then there's the POA 101 and the HOA welcome orientation, and those dates are here. And here's what I would suggest that we do is, get those, if you have, ones that you want to attend, get those to Shannon, and then she'll put the final schedule together.
Okay.
There's no reason to do that in an open meeting.
And you said, yeah, so we each have to take about 4 of them then? Is that what that worked? Because you said 2 months.
Yeah, that's typically what we've done.
Okay.
There's
That's right, that's
actually
right.
26 meetings. So 24 meetings.
As I remember,
24 meetings.
as I remember last year, well, I don't know if I should say this, but if you get them in early, you'll get your dates. Otherwise, you get what's left.
Well,
Right.
that's true.
Yeah, because I took the first 2 months of the year
Yeah, I
last
noticed
year.
that, yeah. And then all the rest of us had to do
Well,
December.
Mitzi called me and she said, there's an ACC meeting right after the first of the year. And I said, fine, just put my name next to it. It's no big deal. So I basically am taking, January. And some other month. I don't
They're
know.
all Thursdays, correct?
They're all
Yeah.
Thursdays.
Well, do people know what they want now rather than, because what if we all just collide?
Just send, Shannon, what you're volunteering for. She'll work out the negotiations. So, I want you guys to all start thinking about objectives, because I'd like to have that discussion right at the beginning of the year. So if you want to send me what you think are objectives, that's great. Now understand, we do have some carryovers. The reserve study is a 2-year objective. The succession planning that you and Steve and I are assigned to is a 2-year assignment. And Carla, as I recall, your communications, was more than 1 year. So,
So say that again.
Especially with some delays due to COVID, so.
yeah, I got that. That kind of hit all of us. So,
What was
okay.
the second one?
The second one was succession planning.
Okay. So, Rick, what do you think is this going to be a special meeting where we just go through what we think all of the objectives should be and discuss them, or what's your plan?
Well, I think that this will be the primary topic of the morning meeting right after the first of the year.
Okay,
You
so
know,
that,
And then if, there's a lot to do, we'll call a workshop.
okay, good.
Yeah. Yes, Steve?
One of the things I'd like the board members to think about before January. First one is, how do we get out of the way of Winston and staff in 2021? Meaning, take less of the staff time. Number 2 is try to figure out a way not to have 2 meetings a month, because if you talk to the staff, they're preparing for a board meeting every other week. So you talk about non-productive time for putting together presentations, et cetera, for the board. We need to figure out a better way to do this so we don't have 2 meetings a month tying up staff time.
I'm open to suggestion.
Well, we just have one and get it done.
Well, yeah, and I think I agree with Steve, and one of the things that I was thinking that we had discussed previously was that to have the once per month meeting, keep it on the 3rd Wednesday, and then for us to keep open the first Wednesday of the month for workshops if needed, but only schedule them if we really need a workshop, and not necessarily have an open board meeting on those days, but actually have it just be a day. Then the reason I say we keep that particular day open is just because then we don't schedule, conflicts on that day. And then if we need to call a workshop, we can.
Okay, Bruce?
I'll echo what Steve promoted, and is that if we become more strategic and less in the weeds, we can get by with one a month.
And you're not going to become more strategic and less in the weeds unless you force yourself.
And one of the ways that would help us with that is only having one meeting a month.
That's right. Put yourself in that situation, you have to work yourself out of it, yes.
Okay. So we can have that conversation in the first meeting of the month too. But I think we should have that first meeting because we need to talk about goals. Last year, goals really didn't get settled until February, other than establishing the CARP committee, which was basically a disaster.
So do you want to have that first meeting as a workshop, or do you want to have that as an open meeting?
Well, right now, I think the community will expect, an open meeting. I don't know that we even need to have the afternoon session. I guess it depends on what you guys send to me.
Well, traditionally, our workshops have
We're
always
open.
been open to the public.
Yeah, they
Only
were.
executive sessions are not.
Well, if it'll help you any, I described in a very open terms what my goal was going to be at the last meeting, and Bruce sat there and said, I don't understand a word you said, so I'm assuming mine is going to be complicated.
Pat, he's not the only one that said that to you. God, the next 3 years are going to be fun.
The last three were too, and I greatly appreciate all you folks.
Okay,
And
well,
Merry
I want to
Christmas.
wish everybody a really happy holiday. And I pray to God that we have a much better 2021 than we had in 2020. I think we can, pat ourselves on the back for what we did last year. So with that,
Move that we adjourn.
meeting's adjourned.
All right.